Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Screwball Baseball Podcast, your home for everything baseball. I'm your host, Mike Lepre, here with my co-host, Frank White.
Hey, how's it going?
Now, we're going to continue our theme of player episodes here as we record again remotely with Skype. This episode, we're going to talk about players that we love, former players that we love, players that we didn't get to watch, and players that we wish we could have watched, or that relatives have talked about, or players in the past that we like to learn about, and stats we like to know. And a lot of these guys are kind of bigger stars. At least that's how my list looks, because the people that really stand the test of time are the big stars. It's harder to find underrated players rather than the big all stars of the time. So we're going to talk. We're going to do similar to last week. We'll talk about like 8 players each we got here that we want to really dive into. Got some honorable mentions at the end. There's so many players that we could talk about. I mean, could be easily the longest episode if we really wanted it to. But we cut it down a little bit just to just to the top 16 guys for both of us that we really love to talk about. And so why don't you start us off, Frank? How we've been doing for the past few episodes?
Sure. So, first player that I want to talk about is the greatest baseball player to ever play the game, and that's Babe Ruth. Obviously, I think everybody loves Babe Ruth. The fascination with Babe Ruth it's worldwide. I think he's the biggest, probably the biggest and most recognizable sporting athlete, and really probably the first superstar or superhero-like athlete that that we've really seen. Let me go into some of his stats, which a lot of people kind of already know, but he's a 342 career hitter, a 474 on base, a 690 slugging. That's his first career. He leads the MLB. He leads all-time MLB in slugging percentage, OPS, and OPS plus.
Mm-hmm.
714 career home runs, 2,214 RBIs, 2,873 hits. He had 123 stolen bases, and 136 triples.
Mm-hmm.
People, I think, kind of forget about that. He had a little bit of speed, and stadiums obviously were bigger, so it helped with triples. But he definitely stole some bases, and he had a little bit of speed. He had 506 doubles. He won the MVP award in 1923. He's only a 2-time All-Star because All-Star games did not start until the mid or early 30s.
Mm-hmm.
He also hit the first All-Star game home run, of course.
Of course.
He did win a batting title. He also won an ERA title.
Mm-hmm.
He was a 7-time World Series champion. He has 15 home runs in the World Series. He has a 326 career batting average in the World Series.
I mean,
it's ridiculous. He was 94 and 46 as a pitcher.
Mm-hmm.
With 2.28 ERA. He had 107 complete games with 17 shutouts. He also had 4 saves. He only had 488 strikeouts. His strikeouts was not a big number back then or a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
He was 3-0 in the postseason, which back then the postseason was only the World Series.
Mm-hmm.
A .87 ERA and 31 innings pitched. He had 2 complete games, and he's the all-time World Series ERA leader. He has the lowest ERA in World Series history. He had a career 182.5 WAR.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he was unbelievable. He was unbelievable at everything he did as a pitcher, as a hitter. He was a above average fielder. The stories that can go along with Babe Ruth are unbelievable. You look at a lot of the stats, a lot of the facts, a lot of the history of the game. He's on like every list.
Mm-hmm.
This guy tied the record held by Babe Ruth, or he is second behind Babe Ruth. He's second behind Babe Ruth. He's third behind Babe Ruth. Everything's Babe Ruth.
Mm-hmm.
It's unbelievable. Everything you hear about is like, oh, Babe Ruth's first. Babe Ruth's first. If he's not first, he's second. If he's not second, he's on the list.
Yeah.
And it's crazy to think. He was also he saved baseball.
Yep.
He saved baseball with coming in after the White Sox scandal. He came in, really created the home run, and became bigger, larger than life. He went to China. He was big in getting baseball into China, growing its brand over there. I mean, the man, has so many nicknames: the Great Bambino, the Sultan of Swat, the Babe. I mean, he just everything so many quotes, so much baseball, comes back to Babe Ruth or started
Mm-hmm.
with Babe Ruth,
Mm-hmm.
and he's just. I think we should have there should be a National Babe Ruth Day in the
Mm-hmm.
LB, similar to what they have with Jackie Robinson, where they have a day everyone wears his number and kind of memorialize Babe Ruth because of his so much impact on the game.
Mm-hmm.
I also believe that the number 3 should be retired. I don't think anyone
Mm-hmm.
should be allowed to wear the number 3 because of what he did. I mean, he really the founder of baseball, really.
Yeah, he
And
is.
he really isn't technically, but he's what made baseball a national brand. Really caused this uproar into baseball that really still continues to this day.
Yeah. I mean, he changed the way we play baseball. I mean, up until then, these guys had, really high 300, 400 batting averages. They didn't really hit home runs. I mean, he hit more home runs in some seasons than some teams did. So he
Yeah,
changed the way that we played baseball in the modern era. And he really, I mean, baseball was kind of in dire straits, at that point, especially after the Black Sox scandal. By the time he kind of came into the limelight, really. I mean, he was in the league, obviously, but really, by the time he really hit his stride and became the hitter that we know, like you said, he has unbelievable pitching stats. He was a pitcher with the Red Sox, and he's just. I agree. He's to me the best player of all time. I know people like to make the argument with Ty Cobb and everything, but what he did for baseball and his legend and I mean, just the stats speak for themselves. I mean, like you said, he's on just about every hitting list ever. I mean, the slugging percentage itself is stupid. The home runs, especially for the time, is just insane. I mean, what more do you
yeah,
say about Babe Ruth?
yeah. I mean, even not in baseball. I mean, in golf, he won tournaments in golf. Never bowled before, won a bowling tournament. Went deep sea fishing and came home with the biggest fish.
Yeah.
I mean, everything he did, he was the greatest at.
Mm-hmm.
He was a great athlete. He really was larger than most people back then.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he had this aura around him. Obviously, he had some, issues on the field, a couple, arguments and stuff with umpires and like a few things off the field. So, I mean, he had his issues. He was human, but, I mean,
Yeah.
the man was just, he did so much for the game and the way he swung and, the way he had created so much power. It's unbelievable. I mean, there's so many great stories. I mean, made more money than the president, and they asked him, he told him, oh, he'd make more than the president. He goes, well, I had a better year than him. So, I mean, the pictures of him wearing the crown. I mean, he's
Mhm.
unbelievable.
Yeah.
He really is baseball. And I think just about every human knows who Babe Ruth is.
Yeah, I agree. If you start to come of age and learn about baseball or even sports for that matter, you know who Babe Ruth is. And he's just, I don't know, you kind of know Babe Ruth when you see him. You know him when you see him in a tape. He's just his own person, his own, that body style, that swing. I mean, the pinstripes on him. Everything about it was just like it just fits so perfectly. And he's a legend is putting it mildly.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think he has like 520 or 500 home runs, 500 record-breaking home runs. Because like the
Yeah,
record
because
like home runs like 100 or something like that. So when he broke that, he hit 500 record-breaking home runs. Every home run after that was a record-breaking home run. Like I think the next highest is uh, like 40 or
yeah,
something like that. It's ridiculous. I mean, 3 home runs in a World Series game. I think it's only been done 4 times, and he done it twice. Like
yeah.
not many lists is anyone better than him. If
Mm,
you're lucky, you tie him, and it's crazy. He's the greatest baseball player of all time. I think that'll never change. And I think
mm.
baseball should really think about honoring him with his own day, similar to Jackie Robinson, and retired at number 3 for forever.
Yeah, I like the idea of retiring number 3 for everyone, especially because number 3 is so synonymous with Ruth. You just, someone else wears 3, exactly, who you think of. You don't think of
Sure.
that player or whoever it is. Well, I think Babe Ruth's the perfect way to start the list because that perfectly encapsulates someone I would have liked to watch back then, someone that I really enjoy learning about, and someone that just the amount of stories. I mean, we didn't even mention the supposed called shot. I mean, just even that is unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, I have a thing right up here of him, a figurine, him, calling the shot. I have a plaque over there, Babe Ruth. I have another, his Hall of Fame plaque. I have a copy of it right there.
Mm,
I have a baseball card of him. Yeah, he's unbelievable. I mean, it's a shame that he died really at a young age. He was like 50s, I believe, because he had so much to give to the game of baseball um, as an older adult. He had 30 more years at least. You know,
Mm.
and he would have lived until the 60s and 70s. He would have so much impact on baseball in the way we play baseball to this day.
Yeah,
If he did pass away so early, but that's kind of how it goes in every sport and everything you kind of learn about. Legends they kind of die young, which is weird.
I
Um,
know.
Not many kind of make it very long, which is kind of weird. But it's a
Mm.
shame he died at a young age because the knowledge and stuff he could have shared in helping of even building baseball could have been even bigger, and that's hard to believe.
Yeah, I believe it was cancer, right? Was that what got him?
Yeah, I
Unfortunately.
believe it was throat cancer of some sort because he got very skinny and he could barely talk,
Yeah.
which is a shame because he was such a powerful, strong man with such a strong voice, and it was taken from him rather quickly. But yeah, I mean, there's not much else you could say. Babe Ruth's the greatest, and I think arguably he's the greatest athlete and sports figure of all time. And I don't think that's ever going to be matched.
Yeah, I agree. It's hard to argue against him, but I understand people do have the argument. It makes sense, but I don't I wouldn't give up ground personally on that. I think Ruth's the best.
Yeah.
All right, well, I'll move on to my. This is for me probably one of my, if not the favorite player of mine from back then. Mainly probably because of my dad, but another Yankee, coincidentally, Thurman Munson. Kind of a similar theme with Ruth with the whole unfortunately dying young thing. Thurman Munson really did die young in the middle of his career, unfortunately. And for my dad, he was his probably second favorite player of all time, right behind another player that we're going to talk about in a little bit, Mickey Mantle. Two Yankee greats. And Thurman Munson was actually because my dad loved him so much, and I learned to really like him too. I wore 15 every chance I could when I played sports. Um, it's just I
Hmm.
don't know, the number just spoke to me, and he was a tremendous catcher too. I mean, that's not even talking about his ability. I mean, he was a tremendous catcher. He could hit, he could field. He was at the Yankees at a time when they needed to win. They had gone through a little dry spell with winning. For that franchise, especially when they literally did nothing but win, and he came in the 70s, and they had some success there. He seemed like to be a larger than life figure when the Yankees needed someone like that. I mean, you had Reggie Jackson obviously as his teammate. There's a larger than life guy, but Thurman Munson, I know that a lot of Yankee fans really love him, and he's someone that will always live in baseball legend. It's unfortunate. It's a little bit of a what could have been, and it sucks what happened with the plane crash and everything. But he's going to live on, as kind of a not only a Yankee immortal, but catching. Even for the short time he played, he's one of the better catchers that you can talk about. He's not up there in the top 5, top 10 conversation, but when you bring up best catchers, Thurman Munson finds himself in the conversation. So
Sure. He
I
would have been
think that
top 5 or top 10.
I was just going to say he would have been a Hall of Famer almost shortly. So, I mean, you got anything on Thurman Munson? I know you're familiar with him for sure.
Yeah. Thurman Munson was a great catcher, a great leader, and really is a great person on and off the field.
Mm,
Another guy that we lost obviously way too young, and his impact on the game would have been even bigger.
yeah.
Especially when he got off the field. Once he was retired and got off the field, what he could have done with the game and what he could have done for people would
Mm,
have been great. But yeah, I mean, there's nothing you could do about it though. But Thurman Munson was a great player, and he's just great to go learn about.
mm,
The big mustache and that that strength, that toughness behind the plate.
mm,
Kind of just he's kind of like the picture of a catcher. Think about a catcher, that's what you think of. Mustache, grizzly. Beat the snot out of you if you have to,
yeah,
and
tough as nails.
nicest guy though.
Yeah. Mm,
So I mean, it's just it's fantastic. He's a fantastic player, and yeah, my dad's also a huge fan of Thurman Munson as well.
yeah. It's hard not to be when Yankee fans around that era, or baseball fans for that matter. Unless maybe if you're a Royals or Red Sox fan, but
All right. Well, I think the next guy that I want to talk about is a guy a little different than what we just talked about. Those two guys, they were kind of older players. Obviously, Babe Ruth in the 20s and teens, 20s, 30s, Munson in the 70s. I want to talk about Albert Bell.
Okay.
Even though he's like a recent player for the most part, I never really got to watch him play. His last year was 2000, so I was only 4 years old. So I never really was old enough to really grasp his career or really watch it. But I mean, I love Albert Bell. It's one of my favorite players to go watch highlights of and learn about. I mean, I have his autograph over there. He was just a mean guy, a big, mean, strong man. He had 381 home runs, 1,239 RBIs, 295 batting average. He hit a lot of doubles. He's the only man in baseball history to have 50-50 season, 50 home runs, 50 doubles.
Oh, wow.
5-time All-Star, 5-time Silver Slugger. He had injuries to his hip, back, and stuff like that. He had some off-field issues. Still to this day, or not to this day, but more recent, last couple of years, he had some off-field issues. He really should be a Hall of Famer. He obviously some of his numbers aren't quite there because he got shortened career. Also, the sports writers really don't like him at all.
Yeah,
which really hurts him. But I mean, his 10-year span is arguably the greatest 10-year span of all time. I think the only guy who really I think has a better 10-year span is Albert Pujols. But I mean, he was unbelievable. He finished in the MVP voting a few times. He got second, he got third twice. Seventh, eighth. He was fantastic. And then the stories you hear about him, having a bat boy or a young player crawl through the air ducts and crawl in and get a bat from the umpire's room because it was possibly corked. I mean, some of the stories you hear, you see the video of him running over Fernando Vina, I believe, at second base, getting pegged and not going to first base because he wanted to hit. I mean, the man was a maniac. He also was, he had the highest free agent contract at one time. He had the highest contract of all time.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
At one point. I mean, it's just a shame he got hurt because all he really would have needed was 2 to 3 more years, and he probably would have been right about 500 home runs, and you would have had to put him in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, at that point.
He's a guy who probably would have hit 600 home runs. Who even knows? Because I mean, about 10 years he had 381 home runs.
Yeah.
He's about 30. He was still kind of in his prime. Back end of his prime. He still had 6 years left or so. So he's probably hitting 500, 600 home runs. But it's a shame because he was so good and such a big part of the Indians team. Without injuries and maybe a little bit more love from the sports writers, he'd easily be a Hall of Famer. And I think somebody you might see, maybe the Legends Committee or the Golden Era Committee or, all those, after voting committees, maybe put him in at some point. I think it's well-deserved, but, it's a wait and see with him.
Yeah. I mean, he's a hell of a polarizing player. I mean, a lot of people seem to hate him, and I can see why. Just the running into the player at second base with his elbow, and like you said, getting pegged and wanting to hit. I mean, he had a very aggressive demeanor. He's someone you didn't want to mess with, but he could hit the hell out of the ball, and he would have been fun to watch. Like you said, he was kind of still. I mean, we were alive when he was playing, but we weren't cognizant. We weren't able to really watch him play. So that would have been cool to watch that. And that Indians team back then with him was sick. So having him in that lineup, I mean. Yeah,
you had young Manny and Tomey and the Alomars, and Kenny Lofton and Albert Bell, Jose Mesa in the bullpen, Omar Vizquel. I mean.
Yeah, I mean, and having him in that lineup is just icing on the cake. It's just unbelievable. He was a great player.
Yeah.
I can see. I guess I can see why people wouldn't like him, but I kind of like him.
Oh yeah.
All right. Well, the next player I want to talk about, I got another catcher here, who's I guess you could say a little bit different than Munson, a little higher up on the catcher list than Munson. But I've got Johnny Bench. Now, Johnny Bench is actually, from what my dad tells me, one of the main reasons that he wanted to catch when he was playing baseball as a kid back in the 60s, 70s, whatever. He's easily top 3 catchers all time. You could probably argue he is the best catcher of all time, all around. He could hit, he could field, and for the time that he played, there weren't many catchers like that. You had Yogi Berra, obviously, but Johnny Bench was kind of one of a kind, and right at the center of that big red machine, that sick Reds team back in the day. He's obviously quite a bit older now, and he's still in pretty good shape. I've seen some documentaries on Johnny Bench, and he seems like a really nice guy off the field, but a very intense guy on the field and off the field. You kind of got that idea that he was all business when he was playing, which, I mean, it shows on the field. I mean, he was a gifted player. I believe he was a top prospect when he was coming into the league. And I know my dad always admired him and always talked about him a lot. So I think that's maybe why it rubbed off on me, and someone that I always wanted to learn about and watch play. And, I always try to get him in the video games. And he's just he's one of those all-stars, one of those legends that he's going to go down. I would assume if he's talked about now, the game always changes. So there's going to be catchers that come along that are, we talk about Yadier Molina right now, his defensive ability behind the plate. But Johnny Bench is always going to be in that conversation, always going to be, I would think, a top 5 catcher of all time. And I think that's well-deserved. He was a fantastic player.
Yeah. Johnny Bench is definitely top 3 all-time catchers.
Mm.
His ability to lead that team with so many superstars on it for so many years, Joe Morgan and guys like that on that Reds team. He was just another one, kind of like Thurman, where you look at him, you knew he was a catcher.
Yeah.
He did play some other positions though throughout his career.
Yeah.
A little bit of first. I think he played a little bit of third, maybe a little bit of left. I mean, he kind of played around, but he was a catcher.
Yeah.
And he was a fantastic hitter, and definitely a guy to go watch some highlights and really learn about, because he's definitely one of the legends of the game, and he will be, for all time.
Yeah, you would think so.
The next guy that I want to talk about, Mike mentioned earlier, was Mickey Mantle. Yeah, a couple of these guys are kind of been obvious names, but Mickey Mantle, I think, is a great guy to talk about because, he was my dad's favorite player. I believe he was Mike's dad's favorite player.
Mm-hmm.
And he was just a polarizing figure on the field. He did everything: switch hitter, power, speed, contact, great defender. Off the field, he a little crazy, a little bit of party. Mm-hmm. Some crazy stories, some crazy quotes. Mm-hmm. So he kind of had this human-like side to him, even though he was arguably one of the best players or one of the best hitters of all time. Similar to Babe Ruth, you see his human side, which sometimes you don't really see. People talk about Jeter. You never really seen his human side. Guys like that. While Babe Ruth, you kind of seen his errors, and you see Mickey Mantle, some of his issues. So you kind of see the human side, which kind of makes people relate to him. Yeah. But I mean, Mickey Mantle, a 3-time MVP, 20-time All-Star. He won the Triple Crown in 1956. His Gold Glove. It's a shame because he's a career 298 hitter. Last year he came back and played that 1 year, dropped them to under lifetime 300 hitter, which is a shame. But career 298 hitter, 421 on base, 557 slugging, 2,415 hits, 536 home runs as a switch hitter. I believe that's still the most as a switch hitter.
I think so, yeah.
1,509 RBIs, 153 stolen bases. I believe he also holds the record for most home runs in the World Series. He has 18 home runs and 40 RBIs. And he had a 110.2 WAR. I mean, he was an unbelievable player. And really, his career was still kind of cut short because of injuries. Because of his way he played the game was so fierce. And some, just bad luck. You hear some of the stories with the drainage pipes and stuff like that. But which some of the bad luck and the way he played the game and never wanted to miss, running, stealing bases, and he played every aspect of the game, playing outfield. Just beat him up. And it's a guy who probably lost, 2, 3, 4 years of his career because of injuries. But he was still unbelievable. And just a real icon of the game. And, anybody who watched baseball from probably around the 50s to the 70s, those 20, 30 years, and in that span, 50s, 60s, 70s, somewhere in there, you're probably a Mickey Mantle fan.
Yeah.
And I know my dad, that's his favorite player. Mike, your dad, I believe that's his favorite player. And it's just a great guy to go watch. His swing is is such a great swing. It's kind of similar to Trout's if you go look. He was just it's unbelievable to go watch him. It was just like a thing of art to see him play baseball.
Yeah, and he's another guy, kind of like you talked about with Ruth, where the number 7 is synonymous with Mickey Mantle. You'd be hard pressed to find a guy that wore 7 that you don't at least think of Mickey Mantle. He was another larger than life guy that, like you said, unfortunately, injuries. He had leg injuries. He kind of played on bad legs a lot of his career. So imagine what he could have been. He was stealing bases, and he had almost 600 home runs as a switch hitter. I mean, it's unbelievable. And all that, and he was like a 5-tool player for sure. He was still a great defender.
He also has the story, hit the ball off the side, they say,
Yeah.
There's another one, he's just a legend. There's always some sort of story or some sort of incident that just, makes you shake your head, learn about him. It's just like a fairy tale kind of guy, but you've kind of still seen his human side, which is you don't really see that much in, many people or many athletes.
Yeah. Yeah, he was unbelievable, and he's someone that I always love learning about, and he's someone I'm trying to get in MLB 20 the show. Hopefully, I can that 99 card that they've got in that game.
Yeah.
Is great.
Yeah, and I think too when he passed away, you've seen the outpouring of love for Mickey Mantle throughout the world. It was kind of similar to Babe Ruth, and in our current time, it was kind of similar to like Kobe Bryant. Sad passing. But the way it kind of just brought everyone from around the world together just kind of proves to how important he was to so many people, as an athlete.
Yeah. Yeah, he's an all-time great, and he'll always be remembered as that. And like I said, number 7 is always synonymous with Mantle now. So yeah, that's my dad's favorite player, and I know that it really hurt him when he went. Unfortunately, I think back in the 90s he died. Moving on, if you want to move on to my next player, I got another Yankee. It's my last one, I swear.
Yeah.
A little bit different though. Same era as Munson. I've got Goose Gossage. Now, Goose Gossage, I don't have too much to say about Gossage, but I put him towards the top of my list because when I think of a reliever coming out of the pen, I think of Goose Gossage because he's got that big nasty snarl, that big. Here's the fastball, hit it. Good luck. He threw apparently like a legendary fastball. And he's also, I always liked Goose Gossage because he's synonymous with that, like the old way of closing games with 3 innings. Instead of coming out in 1 inning and getting your 3 outs, you'd have to go out and get 9 outs, which I think is, I think people kind of forget about that. And I think that these guys really had kind of rubber arms in that regard. I'm sure he threw upper 90s, if not 100. I'm not sure how well they tracked pitch speed at that time. But that big Fu Manchu he's got, and the big intimidation factor that he had. I always thought Goose Gossage was a fascinating character of the game. He's really an outspoken guy too, even now.
Yeah. The big mustache.
He's a hell of a figure in Yankee history and in MLB history. And like I said, you could consider him one of the best closers of all time. Like I said, it's a little bit of a bygone era of the way that they use closers and the way they used to pitch. But I always was fascinated by Goose Gossage, and I think he was an absolutely unbelievable reliever / closer. Because at that point, if you're pitching 3 innings, you're basically just relieving the starter, and that's the end of the game. At that point, and I believe the 70s is kind of his prime. But yeah, I always thought Goose Gossage was really good and fascinating.
Yeah, Goose Gossage was such a great player. Just filled that reliever role, that closer, that dominant bullpen arm that we see in baseball, so important nowadays. But yeah, he was a big help to the Yankees, success. Also pitched with the Padres there. He was very good with them.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously outspoken now. Really kind of outspoken to the fact of the game staying the way it should be, old school kind of style guy.
Yep.
I believe there's a story with Goose Gossage where he was a little wild on the mound and threw real hard, but I believe there was a story when he was pitching Eddie Murray,
Mm-hmm.
who was also one of my favorite players to go learn about. Switch hitter, but he was pitching Eddie Murray for the Orioles, and as he was in his windup, and he was getting close to releasing the ball, the lights went out in the stadium, and when the lights came back on, Goose Gossage was standing on the mound with the ball. I believe Lou Piniella and I think it was Bobby Mercer were in the infield, on the ground, like covering their heads. And Eddie Murray was still standing in the box; he never moved. He was still in his batting stance. And I thought that's a great story just because it kind of shows Goose Gossage how hard he threw, and infielders were kind of ducking it, but it was also just another legend in Eddie Murray standing in the box who was just another guy similar to Goose Gossage who was just tough. Wasn't going to back down. He stood there with no lights. The guy's throwing 95, 96, 97 miles per hour. Who knows exactly? And he never moved out of the box. But I always loved that story because of Goose Gossage being in it, but also because of Eddie Murray being in it. I thought that was just fantastic.
Yeah, it is a great story. Good legend.
Yeah. The next guy I want to go into is arguably one of the greatest pitchers of all time. I think you could put him in maybe top 5 right-handed pitchers of all time. But I got Bob Gibson. He was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And as someone who is not a fan of a pitcher winning MVP, this is the one case. In 1968, he won MVP. He was a 2-time Cy Young. He won Cy Young in 68 as well. 9-time All-Star, 2-time World Series champ, 2-time World Series MVP. He won the ERA title in 1968. And this is probably the greatest pitching year of all time. He was 22-9, which the record isn't, ridiculous, but he had a 1.12 ERA.
Yeah.
That's the kind of reason why maybe a pitcher can win MVP. If he has a year like that, okay, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
But some of the other years, I'm not really. That's unbelievable. As a starting pitcher with a 1.12 ERA, he had 28 complete games that year, 13 shutouts. He had 268 strikeouts, and he had 304 and 2/3 innings pitched that year. It was unbelievable.
Hard to believe he lost 9 games.
Yeah, and the thing is, I believe he gave up. I think it's like maybe 5 or 6 runs he gave up in the whole second half of the year.
Oh my gosh.
And I believe 2 of them came at the first start after the All-Star break.
Wow.
So it was unbelievable. It's the lowest ERA in a regular season for a starting pitcher. And it's never going to get broken.
No.
It's not even going to get close, I don't think.
No, I agree.
For his career, he was 251 and 174 with a career 2.91 ERA. He had 255 complete games, 56 shutouts, 3,117 strikeouts. He was 7-2 with a 1.89 ERA in the postseason. He had 8 complete games, 2 shutouts, 92 strikeouts. He also had 6 saves in his career.
Oh, okay.
Which is pretty crazy. He was just a dominating guy on the mound. He also was a pretty good hitter. As a pitcher, I think he was like a career 206 hitter with like 20-something home runs. He was a pretty good hitter. Definitely held his own there. He was like a mean, intimidating guy on the mound. That's the batter's box, the pitcher's plate. Stay in your box, I'll stay over my plate kind of guy. Didn't want to walk guys. Didn't like doing anything. They lowered the mound because of him.
Yep.
He was baseball because of him because he was so dominant. He had 1 bad year, retired.
Yeah.
He was old. I think he was 39 when he retired, but when he was 38, I believe he still had like a 2 ERA or 3 ERA. He had 1 tough year. He had like a 5 ERA, retired. He didn't mess around. They're very intimidating. Threw very hard. One of the hardest throwing pitchers, especially of that era. Obviously, a baseball legend, a Cardinal great, and a great guy who's still around. You see him in a few things. He threw at the first pitch for the Cardinals, I believe, during the postseason a couple of years back. I believe he was diagnosed with cancer not long ago. I believe he is fighting through that. pretty well, which is fantastic. But
Mm.
overall, great guy, and he's just a dominant pitcher. He's in that documentary that me and Mike, a couple of buddies, watched in Fastball, which he's fantastic in. There's also a story he tells that he really he used to squint on the mound. And he used to kind of get lost what pitches the catcher was calling because his vision was not great. But he
Mm.
said he didn't want to wear glasses. He didn't like the way he looked, and he didn't want people to make fun of him. So that's even scarier. A guy who's throwing the ball so hard with some of the crazy movement, and he really didn't even know sometimes what pitch the catcher was calling. He was just throwing.
Yeah.
And he was just a dominant guy. And I love Bob Gibson and some of his stats. And I have autograph of him as well over there. He's fantastic to go watch and go learn about.
Yeah, he's a legend of the game, Cardinal legend. He had that unbelievable World Series start. I believe he struck out like 16, 17 guys or something ridiculous like that.
Yeah.
I think it was that same year that he had that ridiculous ERA. He did that.
Yeah.
Or at least the year after.
Yeah, and that's something too I forgot to mention. He won 3 games in a single World Series.
I think it was that World Series too.
Won Game 1, I believe, Game 4, and Game 7.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you only need 4 wins to win a World Series. He won 3 of them himself.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy it was unbelievable. He was in the World Series, I think, a couple other times too. I think they lost, with him on the team, but he was just dominant.
Yeah.
Just an intimidating pitcher on the mound, and he was mean. I mean, there's stories about him. The rookie getting their first hit, and he'd tell him you'll never get another first hit against. You never get another hit against me.
Mm.
I believe Dave Winfield before the game was like, "You're like my favorite player," and he said, "I don't talk to people on the other team."
Mm.
I believe Winfield. I'm not sure if it was Winfield, but I'm sure somebody. Like I said, I think somebody got their first hit off of him. He got the ball back. He walked, kind of near first base. He never get another hit off of me. I believe his next at bat he pegged him.
Mm.
He was just. That's what he was. He was just like he was just going to show his dominance on the mound and show his force, his intimidation on the mound, and that's just the way it was. And he was just took that to the next level. And
Yeah.
He's just a fantastic guy. I love Bob Gibson really for that matter. Just being so essentially mean on the mound. It was just fantastic.
Yeah. I love Bob Gibson. He's one of the best, man. He's talk about not wanting to be in the box when he's in the mound.
Oh, you almost didn't want to hit a home run off him.
No, he didn't.
Because he was just going to peg you the next time, or at least brush you off the plate and just staring there like, who cares? Like, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's crazy.
Yeah, I mean that's putting it lightly. Next guy, I got another pitcher as well. More of a reliever though. He did do some starting time, but I've got Dennis Eckersley. Here's a guy who you could consider probably one of the best relievers of all time. Had some wicked stuff. Pitched for a while. He was a guy that when I look back on, he's kind of that similar era as Gossage, a little after. At least that's where he's more known. Guy that wasn't a super intimidating presence, but he was definitely one you didn't want to see jog out of the bullpen, one you didn't want to see coming out to close the game out. Pitching in his prime, he must have been like what Mo was, in his prime. It was like, oh, we really got to hit against this guy. We already had to face, whoever was pitching for the A's at that point. He had I believe he's really well known for his slider. He had that when he would strike someone out, he'd kind of like point at him and he kind of go, yeah, I got you. You know what I mean? And I know that rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. And a lot of guys, I think, actually have the wrong impression of Dennis Eckersley to this day because they think that he's a real a-hole. But he just played with that intensity and that fire. He just wanted to get you out. And he's a great commentator now too. He's a great personality around baseball. He seemed to be a great character at the time. He was with some great A's teams, which really helped them win some World Series or at least get there. And like I said, I believe he started. I think he was a kind of like a quote unquote like failed starter that he really was able to shine in the bullpen. If I'm not mistaken, he pitched well into the 90s too. Didn't he? Had a pretty lengthy career.
Yeah, he had a long career. And it's weird too because as a starter, he threw a no-hitter with the Indians.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, I mean he was like the Goose Gossage, pitching multiple innings.
Mm-hmm.
He was so lights out for a while there. Again, another guy with that big mustache, kind of got that intimidating look to him.
Mm-hmm.
Memorable moment being, with Kirk Gibson hitting a home run off of him, in the World Series with Kirk Gibson with the bad leg, and he comes in. But Eckersley had a great career and had some great numbers. And it really was, go along with Goose Gossage was, one of those really made relievers as big as they are now. Kind of made that jumper. It's like, hey, we need a guy like this in our bullpen to really close out some of these games and really just give us, just shorten the game essentially.
Yeah, he was an important player into establishing what the current climate of baseball is with the bullpen. He was really important in that.
My next guy I want to talk about is it's ironic because it's kind of similar to some of the guys you just mentioned, but it's Riley Fingers.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And here's a guy who was another one. He really shortened games. He did win MVP in 1981, which is kind of surprising, especially as a reliever. Not just a pitcher, but as a reliever. He had a great year, don't get me wrong, but still a little surprising he won MVP that year. Not a huge fan of it, but he had a great year. He won Cy Young that year as well, of course, and that was in 1981, which was weird because he was older at that point when he did that. Because in 1983 he didn't play.
Oh, okay.
I believe he was either retired. I'm not sure exactly the whole story, but in 1983 he didn't play. He came back in 1984 and had another really good year. 1985 he had he struggled and then he retired. But it's just surprising that he won Cy Young and MVP there late in his career and then still didn't play in 83 and then came back. It was surprising to see that. But he's 7-time All-Star, 3-time World Series champ, World Series MVP in 1974. He was 114 and 118 in his career, so he was under 500.
Oh, wow.
2.9 career ERA, 341 saves, which is still one of the highest marks in baseball. I believe he retired. He was either like 1 or 2 on the all-time saves list. He was up there. He's still up there, pretty high. We had 1,299 strikeouts. He did start at times too, because he had 4 complete games and 2 complete game shutouts in his career.
Okay.
1,701 and a third innings pitched in his career.
Okay.
Which is a lot, especially knowing most of his career was as a reliever. I think he had like 30 career starts or something.
Yeah.
That's a lot of innings as a reliever.
Oh, yeah.
He's a real cool guy still to this day. Very nice. You see him in the celebrity softball games and stuff like that. You see him at baseball conventions and stuff like that. But what really made me really like him is the mustache. I mean, I think he has the greatest mustache in baseball history with the curled up on the end, the wax, with the big swirl. He still has it to this day too.
Yep.
That's what really drew me to Riley Fingers, and he's just a great guy too off the field. Another guy I have his autograph for. But yeah, he's just a fantastic pitcher and a fantastic man with just the greatest mustache of all time.
Yeah. That's what first attracts you to him is you see this mustache. You're like, oh, who's this guy? He kind of looks like a fun guy. And little do you know that he's one of the best relievers of all time. It kind of lures you in. It kind of gets you interested in him. I always like Riley Fingers. Even just not even dive into his stats. He looked like a fun guy. He's still, like you said, to this day, he still got the mustache. He still got that really fun demeanor. But he was, he was a great pitcher, and you can't take that away from him. He's not just all for show.
Oh, for sure.
All right. Well, moving on to my next guy. Complete opposite side of Dennis Eckersley. They're forever linked together in history. But a guy I wrote down here is Kirk Gibson. And I basically just took him down, just real quick here. The reason that I even put him down here was, for that infamous home run. I mean, it's one of the most famous sports moments in history. One of the most famous home runs in history. There's also a home run, I believe, in the 84 when he played for the Tigers, 84 World Series or playoffs or something. He hit a home run that I always just like the replay of. With Sparky Anderson yelling at him, "He don't want to walk you. He don't want to walk you." I always thought, and then he hit a home run. It was a big choke point in the game, and I believe it was a big home run for the team and for that series. And just between those two moments, I mean, Kirk Gibson was, if you look into his stats, he was actually a really good player. Maybe a little under the radar guy. He's still prevalent in baseball too. Recently, I believe he was recently in the front office for a team. He was the Diamondbacks manager. He seems like a really fun and cool guy, but he also seems like when he was playing baseball, he seemed like a guy you didn't really want to mess with. Big, intimidating guy, big mustache. And I just always thought, I always loved that famous replay of him hitting the home run and kind of pumping his arm with the broken leg. I mean, it's just an unbelievable thing. And he hit the home run with a broken leg off Dennis Eckersley. I mean, how much more dramatic can you get? I mean, there may not be he's got to be top 5 dramatic moments in baseball. Can you really even name a few more that match that much dramatic flair? I mean, it's insane.
Yeah, I mean, I also believe there was 2 strikes when he hit the home run.
Yeah, he battled.
And I think he kind of looked silly in the beginning of the at bat.
Mm-hmm.
But he hit the home run, pumped his fist. I think he won MVP of the World Series. He only had 1 at bat. That was it.
Yeah.
He's a fantastic man. Still in baseball. Obviously, he had some health issues. I think he was diagnosed with Parkinson's or something. I'm not entirely sure. That's what kind of dropped him out of like a manager role, but kind of embraced his front office role. Last year, we were in Detroit. They had their World Series anniversary, and we got to see him on the field, so that was kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Kirk Gibson's a great guy, and obviously one of the top 5 greatest moments of all time. The home run, and he was really big in helping the Tigers, get back to a serious. He wanted to play baseball. There was no messing around with him. There's a documentary, I believe, on him and or on his career with the Dodgers and stuff like that, which goes into it. But he was a great player, and definitely one of the most memorable players because of a couple moments in his career.
Yeah,
he's definitely a guy we like to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
But the next guy that I want to talk about is one of my favorite players of all time, and he's just fantastic. I love him in the video games. I get him every year, and he's the man. But it's Willie McCovey.
Mm-hmm.
Stretch, the original Big Mac. Some great nicknames. He was MVP in 1969. He was Rookie of the Year in 1959. 6-time All-Star. He was All-Star Game MVP. 270 career hitter. 374 career on base. 515 career slugging. 2,211 hits. 521 home runs. 1,555 RBIs. His greatness and legacy with the Giants and the Bay Area as a whole is unbelievable. He played with the Padres a little bit, played with Oakland a little bit, but almost all of his career was with the Giants. And in the Bay Area, he had such an impact in that area, especially in Oakland, with some of its issues it deals with. The McCovey Cove, obviously named after him.
Yeah.
But an awesome guy, very cool guy. Big smile. Just a great guy. He was a big part of the Giants, playing with Willie Mays, and just a big man who had just dominant strength. It's a shame he passed away recently. He died. He died on Halloween 2018. So we're almost 2 years on the anniversary of that. But just a great guy. I love Willie McCovey. Another guy I have his autograph for. Just a fantastic player to go learn about and to look up, and just what he did off the field, like I said, in the Bay Area is probably just as important, or just as if not more impactful than his playing career was his impact in the Bay Area and what he did, for so many causes out there.
Yeah, Willie McCovey's a legend out there, a legend of the game, and I know how much you love him, and I know how much you like getting him in MLB, which is always fun. Because he was just such an unbelievable player all around, and like you said, I'm not too up on his kind of humanitarian work, I guess you could call it, but I know that he was a big part of that community and a big part of really any team he was on, and he seemed like a really cool guy from his career all the way to his unfortunate death just about a year and a half ago. He's another player I always like learning about, and especially, McCovey Cove, named after him, like you said. It's just he's another legend of the game that he may even fly a little under the radar, you may argue, with a big, powerful hitting first baseman, especially for that time.
Sure.
Here's the guy I want to talk about, and actually the next two guys I want to talk about really don't even. They kind of just the names speak for themselves. But the first guy I want to talk about is Nolan Ryan. Nolan Ryan is easily one of the best pitchers to ever live. Has that strikeout record that I don't know if that'll ever get broken at this point. It's a near 6,000. It's like 5,700 something. Strikeout. 57-14.
Yep.
There you go. I don't think that record will ever be broken. He had like a rubber arm. He could just pitch and pitch and pitch. He had a long career, which probably contributed to that strikeout total. But I mean, the dude apparently had a legendary fastball. Like I said, with some of the older guys like Goose Gossage, you could take some of the old, wise tales and old the way that they used to calculate and track fastball speed and pitch speed. You could take it with a grain of salt. Maybe by today's standards, maybe he was only throwing 95, 96, which today is pretty standard. But I mean, you have to look at it for the time. I mean, the dude was just straight up dominant. I mean, he was, like I said, one of the best pitchers of all time, and that's not even a question. And talk about intimidation. There's a guy, like you said with Bob Gibson. I would not want to be in the plate up to bat when Nolan Ryan's looking me down from the mound. There's not a guy I want to see looking back at me.
No.
Go watch that Robin Ventura video. Unfortunately for Robin Ventura, that famous picture of him with the blood all over his mouth and all over his jersey and stuff. I mean, he really didn't take crap from no one. He probably still doesn't. And he's still a prominent figure around baseball. And what more is there to say about Nolan Ryan? He's easily one of the best to ever do it. From a starting pitching perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I think he has about like 9 no-hitters.
Yeah, something absurd. Yeah,
and he has like 15 one-hitters or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he pitched like 30 years or something crazy. He pitched in the Astrodome.
Yep.
He hurt his arm right there. His last pitch, he hurt his arm, walked off the mound. That was it. He knew that he popped his arm. He was like 40-something years old. I mean, he started with the Mets. He was real wild, kind of controlled a little bit of his wild nature, and really turned into this dominant pitcher. I think his career win-loss record was almost 500, to be honest, which is crazy. But his strikeouts is just unbelievable. And he was so good. He was so dominant. And when he retired, I believe he used to still go through bullpen sessions for like the Rangers, and they would sell tickets for people, or they would open the gates early so people can go watch him kind of throw bullpen sessions. And he's one of my dad's favorite players, and the stories that he has, stories around him and stuff like that are just remarkable. But
how could you not like him? I mean, man.
Yeah, another one that they mentioned in that documentary we watched.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But he's a great pitcher. Nolan Ryan is crazy. He was just a crazy guy.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
The next guy that I want to talk about is Willie Stargell.
Okay.
Another Willie, but Willie Stargell, Pops was his nickname. He won the MVP in 1979. He was 39 years old when he won the MVP.
Was that the We Are Family year?
Yeah. He was a 7-time All-Star, 2-time World Series champ. He won the World Series MVP in 1979.
Mm-hmm.
He batted .282. He is a career .360 on base, career .529 slugging, 475 home runs, 1,540 RBIs, 2,232 hits. I mean, he was just a big man with some just unbelievable power. Carried that team in 1979 to the World Series, and beat a remarkable Orioles team with some unbelievable pitching. They had some great uniforms with the yellow, with the like train conductor hats that no one's matched yet.
Yeah.
They had those little bit weird shaped hats. I mean, fantastic player. It seems like everybody we talked about had some fantastic mustache, but he had a big mustache. He was just so big and strong. I believe he's one of the only players to hit a home run out of Dodger Stadium. I mean, it's just fantastic, and I love learning about Willie Stargell. It's a shame too because he passed away too at a younger age. He passed away in 2001. He had a lot more to give to baseball and to the communities around. A true legend in baseball, and I think one of the most polarizing figures in Pittsburgh sports.
Mm-hmm.
Pennsylvania sports, and yeah, just a great hitter, a great leader, and just a strong man who could just crush a baseball.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, he's a talk about a Pirate legend. I mean, he's got to be up there with the greats for that franchise. You know, the Roberto Clementes of the Pirates franchise. Bringing him that World Series, and like you said, he was at an older age. He won the World Series MVP and all that. He's another guy that I know both me and you like learning about and hearing about because he seemed like a big power guy, big intimidating bat in the at the plate and in the lineup. And it's nice to hear about a team with not to knock the Pirates, but a team with not as much of a legacy as say a team like the Dodgers or the Yankees or anything like that, and they've got still big larger than life stars like that, and that World Series I know means a lot to that franchise. And he was right at the center of it. I believe he was the lead guy behind all of that, to put the stars in the cap and all that stuff. I think that was all him, or not all him, but it was mostly him.
He definitely helped. The Pirates organization has a strong past, but it's more recent. Recent years, 90s and stuff like that. They kind of struggled, but like long time ago, they had a great franchise. Bill Mazeroski and Clemente. I thought Sturgill was also big because of the tragic Clemente story. That Sturgill kind of came up shortly right after, or was there, right then, and helped kind of ease that pain with having another superstar there, lovable guy, and kept that team winning. So it kind of helped ease a little bit of pain to Pirates fans and baseball fans. Just it's not like you can ever ease that pain, but or erase that pain, but he kind of helped. And that's another big reason why he was so important to the Pirates.
Yeah, great player, great pick there. I know we both like Willie Stargell. So I'm gonna keep with the Willie trend here. Third one here. This is another guy, like I said, with Nolan Ryan that really needs no further explanation. But I got Willie Mays. How could you have a list of best players that you wish you could have watched without having Willie Mays on it? Talk about a guy I wish I could have been there in Polo Grounds when he made that behind the back, over the shoulder catch. Willie Mays, talk about five-tool player, speed, fielding ability, arm, hit for contact, hit for power. The guy is another guy kind of similar to Babe Ruth, where it's like you see a hitting record or anything like that. It seems Willie Mays is somewhere on that list. Whatever it is, one of the top, or you could argue probably the best center fielder of all time. Still alive, still kicking. Obviously he's quite a bit older now. He played quite a bit ago, but the main reason I put him on this list is because if I could have seen Willie Mays play, it'd have been unbelievable. Just that time period for outfielders, Mickey Mantle being around that time too. Talk about a larger than life, important baseball player to the history, and important player obviously to the Giants too. I don't know if I need to even say more. He was an absolute beast. He probably, if you stuck him in today's game, he'd probably still be a beast.
Yeah. Willie Mays is an unbelievable player. Still has an impact on baseball to this day. And the play in Polo Grounds. I have a picture of it over there with his autograph on it, which I got surprisingly cheap. It's fantastic. He's a fantastic player, a five-tool player, one of the greatest of all time. He was teammates with McCovey, with those Giants teams. Yeah, we went to that one minor league stadium, and he actually played at that minor league stadium, and I thought that was really cool that we were at a stadium, like a small minor league stadium that Willie Mays played at. I thought that was really, really cool, really fascinating. Yeah. But yeah, he's a great player to go learn about with, obviously, a decorated career and, top 5, top 10 players of all time.
Yeah, 100%.
The next guy I want to talk about is kind of a funny one for us. He had a really good career, though, and definitely one of those underrated guys that gets overlooked in the history of baseball. But you ready for this? Let's make sure I got his name right. Frank White. So I have his autograph over there, of course. Fantastic name. I should say so myself. I remember as a kid having going through baseball cards, and I was like, "What?" I see Frank White, and I was like, "What is this?
Yeah.
What
Wait
is?
a minute.
Who are you?" So at that point, I learned about him, but I really had a good career.
Yeah.
A five-time All-Star, World Series champion, eight-time Gold Glove.
Mm-hmm.
He was a Silver Slugger in 1986. He was ALCS MVP in 1980. 2006 hits,
Okay.
407 doubles, 160 home runs,
Okay.
886 RBIs, 178 stolen bases. He was that traditional second base, great defender, solid hitter, could run the base as well. He was a 255 career hitter, 293 on base, and 383 career slugging.
Mm-hmm.
He had 912 runs. Like I said, he was a great defender, an eight-time Gold Glove.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he was a huge part of those Royals teams. Him, George Brett, Hal McRae.
Mm-hmm.
He was a huge part of that team. He's in the Royals Hall of Fame. His numbers retired, and he had a career of 34.8 WAR. I mean, he's a really good player. I think he got like 3.8% Hall of Fame vote. So he's not on the ballot anymore, or he was never really on the ballot very long. But yeah, he had a really solid career. Definitely an underrated guy, and in the Kansas City area, he's a big name, and probably for Yankee fans too, because the Royals were a big rival of the Yankees at the time.
Yeah.
But other than that, he definitely gets forgotten about in baseball. I think as an underrated guy, but yeah, we always talk about him because of I had the same name as him. I always learned, thought that was crazy, so I always learned about him, and I got his autograph on a baseball card. But yeah, really good career. For the most part, just a guy that I like because I share a name with him, so I thought that was really cool.
Yeah. Of course, you see Frank White in a baseball card, and you go, "Wait a minute,
Yeah,
wait a
so
minute here."
yeah. I mean, Hall of Fame, Royals Hall of Famer. I don't know what to tell you. So
I know it's amazing too. It's not just some generic player. It's like a guy that's like a Royals all time great.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I love it. I mean, yeah, he was a great player. Like you said, he wasn't like a superstar, but I mean, to the Royals and helping them bring them a World Series, and I probably only really learned about him because you guys share a name. I always thought that was funny.
yeah.
I can't believe I've been co-hosting this podcast with Frank White this whole time.
Yeah, no, pretty important. I'm pretty important in the Kansas City area.
I know. All right, well, this is my last guy I got here. I just wanted to include this guy as a bit of a throwback and maybe a little homage to all those old players. But a guy that I do actually really kind of always wish I could have seen him play was Walter Johnson. Here's a guy that I guess you could not say lost in time, but talk about an old style of baseball. I mean, he's a pitching legend. Back when pitchers would just pitch basically all 9 innings, they'd pitch until their arm fell off. I wish I could have seen how hard he really threw. How do they pitch that much for that long? Just, I guess, the way they pitch with that kind of like the slingshot sidearm action thing that they had going on. He has one of the most infamous fastballs of all time, like you were talking about with the documentary we watched. The way that they tracked speed back then was really weird and interesting. And I wonder, they say he threw really hard, but by today's standards, was he only throwing 90 miles an hour? Was he only throwing 91, 92? To today's standards, would he even be able to compete in the league? I mean, it's just such an interesting conversation to have about these old players. Back in the teens and the 20s, I believe was was kind of maybe even the early 1900s. I mean, such a long time ago. Baseball's changed so much, and like I said, I always would have liked to have go back in the time machine and see old baseball in that style and have him on the mound and see what he really had, and if he was really as overwhelming of a pitcher as they came back then. And if you stick players in that time, if that's the fastest that they had ever seen, then that's fast. But you stick him in today's game, he might be getting rocked. Unfortunately, that's how much the game has changed in 100, 120 years.
Yeah, Walter Johnson is like one of those one of those Babe Ruth type guys, Mickey Mantle type guys, Cy Young. He's just a legend, an all-time legend, with some unbelievable numbers. I mean,
Oh
his
yeah.
stats are ridiculous. He's part of that. Do we split baseball in half? Do we make it like 1950s and back is like make a different record book for the next 50 years or the next going forward from 1950? Because some of those numbers, a lot of those numbers are never going to be beat. I mean,
Oh yeah.
Cy Young has 511 wins. I mean, I don't even know if guys are going to have 511 starts in their career, or alone 511 wins.
I know.
He also had 300 on losses.
Yeah.
And 700 complete games. I mean, Walter Johnson, he had some similar stats as well. But yeah, just unbelievable. Just folklore. But people got. I think some people forget that he was he was a baseball player. He played baseball. It's not just like a story, just not like a poem or in a storybook fantasized baseball. He was a real baseball player with some unbelievable numbers and some unbelievable stories. So I think that's a great guy to go back and look at. But some other honorable mentions that I like. I always bring up. Of course, Eddie Murray. I talked about earlier. He could have easily been on this list because he is one of my favorite players to learn about. The mustache, the mutton chops, and how important he was with the Orioles, a switch hitter. That story with Goose Gossage I mentioned. I mean, he's unbelievable. He's definitely one of my favorite players to learn about. But also Kirby Puckett. Shame that he passed away at a young age as well. How important it was to the Twins with the big home run, and watching the video of him robbing the home run over the plexiglass. That was crazy. Doc Gooden. I know his career, but Dave Winfield. My dad really liked Dave Winfield. Tony Gwynn, fantastic career, one of the best hitters of all time. Again, passed away way too early. Had way too much to give to baseball. It's a shame. But Rod Carew, Tony Gwynn and Rod Carew, I think they kind of go together. Reggie Jackson. Dad really liked Reggie Jackson. Brooks Robinson, the greatest third baseman. Dave Parker, George Foster, Joe Carter. Fantastic. Game 7. Touch 'em all, Joe. I got the picture over there of him hitting a home run. I have it signed. It's fantastic. Paul O'Neill. He's another one like the Albert Bell. We kind of knew about him, but weren't old enough to kind of really realize his career. But especially him kicking that ball was fantastic, and beating up the water coolers, and it's fantastic.
Warrior.
But another guy, Bob Feller, fantastic. Bob Feller is another guy I love learning about. Going to World War II, and coming back and still dominating baseball. I think the opening day no hitter. I got his autograph as well. I got a lot of people's autographs, Mike.
Well, I know.
It's almost like I like this sport or something,
I know. Man. It's unbelievable.
But Jack Morris, thank God he got in the Hall of Fame. I mean, come on, one of the greatest postseason pitchers of all time. Oh, was the ERA is too high? Yeah, well, if you had Jack Morris, you won the World Series, so let's calm down.
It's true.
Another guy that should be in the Hall of Fame, I'm not going to get into it. I can start yelling right now, but Fred McGriff. Because he didn't hit 500 home runs. He had 493. I mean, he was a superstar in his era. I mean, a superstar.
Yep.
And, I mean, his nickname alone should put him in the crime dog. Fantastic nickname. But, and then another guy I always like to learn about, just because, probably to Yankee fans and a lot of baseball fans, he's probably like a menace, but Gaylord Perry.
Yeah.
Always touching him, his leg, his hat, his face, his whatever, because, he always had some sort of substance, or he didn't have substance, but he made it, look like he did. And the story of him not being a great hitter, his manager, I believe his name was Alvin Dark, he said that they'll have a man on the moon before Gaylord Perry hits a home run. And the story goes that the day that they landed on the moon, Gaylord Perry hit a home run.
Yep.
I just thought that's an unbelievable story.
That is a great story.
Gaylord Perry pitched a really long career. But, so those are some honorable mentions I like to talk about, or, want to mention, because, obviously there's so many players you like to learn about. especially me and Mike. Really like the game and the history of the game, almost like the history of the game, almost more than the current game. It's crazy. We
Yeah.
really love the history of the game. So there's so many more players, but those are definitely some of the bigger names that we talk about, and we like to learn about. And
Yeah.
I think Mike has a few as well.
Yeah, I got a few of my own. Obviously you hit a lot of the big ones, but there's some guys here too that I'd like to mention. Just some names I want to round off here. Steve Carlton, one of the best lefties of all time.
Mm-hmm.
A guy that may not necessarily be one of the legends of the game, but a guy that I know our parents liked. Another guy in the 70s, that 70s Yankee team, Greg Nettles. Next guy, Hank Aaron, just a little name there. Another big Yankee, Don Mattingly. I wish I could have watched him. He retired right before we were even born. Guy we just lost, unfortunately, Al Kaline. Fantastic player. Unfortunate loss there. Little name here that should be in the Hall of Fame, Pete Rose.
Yeah, sure.
The all-time hit leader, not in the Hall of Fame. It's a crime.
Yeah, I got his autograph right up there on a baseball, and it says he signed it, and it says, "I'm sorry, I bet on baseball." That's all there, but
Yeah.
That's one of the biggest crimes in baseball, not having him in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I don't know how you could keep him or at this point Shoeless Joe Jackson out of the Hall of Fame.
We'll probably have a whole episode where we talk about that stuff because we'll probably start yelling.
Yeah, it just pisses me off. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then I just wanted to give a shout out just to the older players that, like I said, Walter Johnson kind of get lost in time, and for their time were absolutely unbelievable. You go look at some of these older players' stats; they batted about 400 every year. It was unbelievable. Napoleon Lajoie, Cap Anson, Ty Cobb, Rogers Hornsby, Honus Wagner. These guys, old style of the game, and the ball wasn't. They don't have the science behind the ball or the bats that they do now. And like I said, these guys just hit for contact, and like I said, they batted like 400. They had a bunch of triples and stuff like that. It's just a bygone era of baseball, and it's always interesting to go back and learn about those guys. So I wanted to give them a shout out.
Sure. Ty Cobb and Babe Ruth had their rivalry.
Yeah.
Ty Cobb hated Babe Ruth because all he did was hit home runs. Babe Ruth said, if I hit for those dinky singles, I could bet 600. They both got inducted for the same Hall of Fame class, and Ty Cobb wasn't going to go. He said, if Babe Ruth said, I ain't going. He used to sharpen his cleats. He was crazy. But he's fantastic to learn about because it's Ty Cobb.
Oh, yeah.
4,000 hits,
Yeah, talk about a legend of the game.
Yeah, and it's crazy. It's crazy. There's so many players out there that we like to learn about. There's just so many. And such a great history in so many eras. It's just crazy. But I hope we gave some of these names and some of our listeners go look them up or think back about them. And for listeners, have any names you want us to mention next week or give our opinions on? Of course. Leave us a name or leave us a message, and we'll definitely, mention them. But I think it was definitely a great thing to do, just to kind of go through the history of baseball, and to go along with that, like me and Mike mentioned last week, we want to start doing a trivia question.
Mm-hmm.
You'll see on our Twitter page and our Facebook page, we're going to post a trivia question as well. Every week, as what I meant to say, we're going to post a trivia question every week on our Twitter page and our Facebook page, and we'll give the answer to the trivia question on each podcast. So, that'd be a great thing. So, a little interactive thing. So, the first trivia question that we wanted to post is, with the recent essential, I guess, a holiday we just had for baseball, with Jackie Robinson Day, who is the first African-American baseball player in Major League Baseball?
Mm-hmm.
That's the trivia question. Who is the first African-American baseball player in Major League Baseball? Seems like a simple question, huh, Mike?
Yeah, you look at it from an entry-level perspective in baseball, and it's pretty open and shut question there. But I don't think many people even know who it is.
Yeah, and that's what's weird. Jackie Robinson obviously so important to the game of baseball and society as a whole. Mm. But sometimes I think he gets a little extra credit because this guy, and I'm going to mention it. His name is William Edward White.
Yep, that's
Look
right.
him up. I believe it was 1876. He played a game of baseball, a recorded game of baseball. He played more. He played more than one, but they have one recorded game, and he was African American. So he is actually the first African American baseball player in Major League Baseball history. So that's just a crazy fact that I'm sure not many people out there know about, which is kind of weird. But hopefully he starts getting a little bit more credit and starts getting a little bit more recognition around sports and around baseball.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, he. I mean, like I said, he's someone that people don't really know. A guy definitely lost in time. 1870 was 1876 or so.
I believe it was 1876. He played.
Played for the Providence Grays.
Which was a really dominant franchise at the time, and for into the early 1900s.
Are they even a part of a team's history, or is that just the standalone? Like, would the Providence Grays turn into like the Dodgers or something?
I'm not sure exactly, but I know Charles. I believe it was Charles Old Hoss Ragborn, who has the most wins in a single season, played on the Providence Grays.
Okay.
So I mean, this is a prominent franchise, and this guy played as the first African American for him. So I mean, it's a crazy part of baseball history, and obviously it's so long ago that no one really talks about it or even thinks about it. But it's there. The history's there, and he made it, and it's definitely something for our listeners to go look up and find out about.
Yeah. So there's your first trivia question right there. We're going to try and post our trivia questions every week before the podcast goes live. It's a little extra of little baseball knowledge for you every week there. I think that was a good one, too, to start out with, Jackie Robinson Day. Unfortunately, there's no baseball going on to help celebrate the day, but so that was an appropriate question for around this time here that we're recording.
Sure.
All right. You got any final notes here on the any last greats you want to mention or anything final?
No, I think that's pretty much it. I think next week we're going to talk about hopefully some stadiums that we've been to and some stadiums we plan on getting to soon and some trips we plan on making. That should be a real fun episode because we have some real good stories and some real good opinions on some of these stadiums we've been to. So we're going to talk about that next week. I think next week also we're going to be back in person. Mm-hmm. So the quality should be a little bit better. Should be a little bit more back to normal. So that should be a real fun episode next week. So hope you guys tune in for that one. Kind of get off the topic of players and get back into some other things. So next week should be a real fun episode. I mean, other than that, that's pretty much all I got.
Yeah, we'll keep hitting you with content. We'll keep hitting you with some episodes, even if it's episodes like players and stadiums and just general stuff that we like talking about. We'll keep hitting you with it until we hear some news about baseball. Hopefully soon here. I know that Rob Manfred apparently had a meeting with the 30 MLB teams. Apparently, it was very vague and very not informative. So that's encouraging.
Great commissioner.
So, I know that some countries and some states are starting to lift a little bit their travel bans. No American Airlines letting people travel out of the country. So maybe stuff is starting to get a little better. But hold your breath a little bit and everyone still be careful out there. Don't go rushing out and, trying to travel now. So let's focus on that stuff. And hopefully we'll start getting a little bit of a routine here, recording in person again and getting off of Skype, or at least to a lesser extent, like I said, maybe every other week or something. We're still figuring it out. It's kind of hard to really predict anything anymore with the world that's going on. Mm-hmm. So until then, you can follow me on Twitter at RealMikeLepre. You can follow me on Instagram at Mike Lepre. And
you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at FDubs10.
You can follow our official Screwball Podcast Twitter at ScrewballPod. You can follow our official Screwball Podcast Facebook at ScrewballPod, no E in Screw. And that's it from us, guys. We'll see you next week.
Take care.